I'd be lying if I said this wasn't one of the most unexpected hip-hop storylines to emerge recently, because the conversation surrounding Kendrick Lamar and Lupe Fiasco suddenly feels like it's heading toward a lyrical showdown that fans have debated for years. Whether an actual battle ever happens is another question, but Lupe's latest comments have made it much harder for him to avoid this rivalry the next time Kendrick decides to respond publicly. If you've been waiting to see two elite lyricists potentially collide, you're definitely going to want to stick around, because this situation gets a lot more interesting than it first appears. Before we dive into everything, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us as we continue pushing toward our next subscriber milestone, because your support genuinely keeps these conversations going. Now, here's what's important to understand. Kendrick himself hasn't really been fueling this latest discussion, and ever since his recent public appearances, he's remained relatively quiet while staying focused on his own lane. That's exactly why the attention has shifted almost entirely toward Lupe, whose long-running criticism of Kendrick continues to resurface despite his legendary reputation as one of hip-hop's greatest lyricists. In my opinion, that's one of the few questionable spots in an otherwise Hall of Fame career, because every time this topic comes up, Lupe seems determined to revisit it from a new angle. This latest round began after Lupe boldly claimed there are 100 rappers better than Kendrick Lamar, but trust me, that statement only scratches the surface of what actually happened. The full exchange started when Lupe unexpectedly joined a live stream hosted by fellow YouTuber Koala T, a creator known for entertaining hip-hop discussions and reactions. Credit where it's due, Koala kept the conversation lively, and at times it honestly felt like he was intentionally pushing Lupe's buttons just to see how far the debate would go. Of course, that strategy worked, because while Koala challenged Lupe with some wild takes, Lupe fired back with equally controversial opinions about Kendrick, making the entire discussion impossible to ignore. During the live stream, Lupe originally showed up to address criticism directed at himself, but the conversation quickly shifted once Koala brought up Lupe's long-standing views on Kendrick. From there, the discussion turned into an extended back and forth filled with arguments that deserve some context before anyone rushes to pick a side. One of the biggest moments came when Lupe argued that there are 100 rappers better than Kendrick Lamar, but trust me, that statement only scratches the surface of what actually happened. The full exchange started when Lupe unexpectedly joined a live stream hosted by fellow YouTuber Koala T, a creator known for entertaining hip-hop discussions and reactions. Credit where it's due, Koala kept the conversation lively, and at times it honestly felt like he was intentionally pushing Lupe's buttons just to see how far the debate would go. Of course, that strategy worked, because while Koala challenged Lupe with some wild takes, Lupe fired back with equally controversial opinions about Kendrick, making the entire discussion impossible to ignore. During the live stream, Lupe originally showed up to address criticism directed at himself, but the conversation quickly shifted once Koala brought up Lupe's long-standing views on Kendrick. From there, the discussion turned into an extended back and forth filled with arguments that deserve some context before anyone rushes to pick a side. One of the biggest moments came when Lupe argued that there are 100 rappers better than Kendrick Lamar, while criticism was also thrown his own way about taking too long to make his lyrical points. To keep things completely fair, I'm not saying this because I'm trying to side with anyone. I just think the conversation deserves a balanced perspective. There's simply no realistic world where 100 rappers are better than Lupe Fiasco, because he's unquestionably one of the greatest lyricists to ever touch a microphone. At the same time, if we're comparing elite-level MCs, I still believe Kendrick Lamar belongs in a tier above almost everyone, including Lupe, which is exactly why this debate refuses to disappear. Eventually, the conversation reached its most explosive moment when Lupe doubled down on his claim that 100 rappers outrank Kendrick lyrically. And honestly, instead of trying to defend or explain it away, let's watch the clip and break it down together.
The live stream only became more intense from there, and you could tell both sides were refusing to back down. Koala kept pressing Lupe for clear answers, while Lupe insisted his opinion wasn't changing no matter how many times the question was asked. Instead of backing away from the controversy, he doubled down and argued that countless rappers possess stronger, pure battle rap skills than Kendrick Lamar. That immediately became the biggest headline from the entire conversation, because fans knew those comments were going to spread across the hip-hop world. Now here's where things get really interesting. Lupe wasn't arguing that Kendrick lacks success or artistry. In fact, he openly acknowledged that Kendrick has stronger albums, better production, a better overall team, and excels in several areas as an artist. The one category Lupe refused to concede was lyricism, insisting that bar for bar he still believes he has the advantage. Whether you agree or disagree, that's a massive statement considering the level of respect Kendrick has earned over the years. Lupe also expanded his argument by claiming there are numerous underground and battle rappers whose pen game surpasses Kendrick's in a pure lyrical setting. He even started mentioning names to support his point, but this is exactly where the debate becomes extremely controversial. For many fans, that isn't simply hot take anymore. It's a claim that challenges Kendrick's standing as one of the defining lyricists of his generation. Once Kendrick's name gets attached to comments like that, people aren't going to treat it as harmless debate. That's why this situation feels different from the competitive spirit we've seen throughout hip-hop history. This isn't another control-style moment where artists naturally respond to being called out. These remarks directly question the very skill that built Kendrick's reputation, and that's a much bigger line to cross. Whether that was Lupe's intention or not, the reaction was almost guaranteed. Another layer that people continue pointing out is Lupe's history of showing more support toward Drake than Kendrick during recent years. That doesn't automatically mean he's biased, but it does add another angle that fans can't ignore. When those previous comments are combined with his latest criticism of Kendrick, many listeners believe a pattern is starting to emerge. Fair or unfair, that's the perception driving much of the conversation online. The biggest question now is simple: does Kendrick respond? Considering Lupe's status as one of the greatest lyricists ever, these comments carry far more weight than criticism coming from a random artist looking for attention. If Kendrick ever decides to fire back, even with a single clever line on a feature or future record, it would instantly become one of the biggest lyrical moments in modern hip-hop. That's exactly why so many fans are paying close attention right now. At the same time, it's important to recognize Lupe's accomplishments regardless of where you stand in this debate. He's widely respected as one of rap's elite writers, an incredible conceptual artist, and someone whose best work has earned a permanent place in hip-hop history. Even people who completely disagree with his Kendrick comments usually acknowledge that his talent is undeniable. That's what makes this discussion so compelling. It involves two artists whose lyrical resumes speak for themselves. In the end, this debate matters because it's happening between two genuine heavyweights, not because of manufactured internet drama. Hip-hop has seen plenty of washed-up artists throw shots simply to stay relevant, but this doesn't fall into that category. When someone with Lupe's reputation questions someone with Kendrick's resume, the culture listens. Whether this eventually turns into a lyrical exchange or ends as another heated debate, one thing is certain: fans will be watching every move from both sides.
The biggest reason this conversation has exploded is because it isn't coming from someone looking for a few viral clips. Lupe Fiasco has already secured his place among hip-hop's greatest lyricists, which is exactly why his comments carry so much weight. That's also why so many fans are struggling to understand why he consistently seems reluctant to give Kendrick Lamar the same level of credit that many others do. Whether that's personal opinion, competitive pride, or something deeper, only Lupe truly knows. Personally, I've never been a fan of asking active competitors to serve as completely objective judges. It happens in every competitive field. Once you've shared the same stage, fought for the same recognition, or competed for the same legacy, emotions naturally become part of the equation. That's why I always take opinions from fellow artists with a little caution. They often know more than the public, but they're also closer to the situation than anyone else. Looking at everything that's happened, it honestly feels like this story is approaching a turning point. We all watched years of tension eventually boil over between Kendrick and Drake, and now another high-profile rivalry seems to be gaining momentum. I'm not saying a full diss track is guaranteed, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kendrick eventually addresses these comments in a subtle way. Whether it's a guest verse, a standalone release, or simply a clever line hidden inside a future record, this feels like something that's now on his radar. The reason I believe that is simple. when criticism comes from someone with Lupe's resume, it's much harder to ignore than random internet chatter. Kendrick has built a career on responding through music rather than endless interviews. So if he decides these comments deserve an answer, history suggests that's exactly where the response will happen. Until then, all anyone can do is speculate. At the same time, none of this changes Lupe's legacy. He's still one of the most gifted writers the genre has ever produced, and his influence on lyricism is undeniable. That's what makes this debate so fascinating. You're talking about two elite rappers whose accomplishments speak for themselves, which is why fans continue arguing over every statement and every interview. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Lupe genuinely believes everything he said, or was he simply defending his own perspective as a lyricist? More importantly, do you think Kendrick should respond, or is staying silent the smarter move? If a lyrical battle between these two ever became reality, would it surpass some of the biggest rap rivalries we've seen in recent years? Because the focus would be almost entirely on bars instead of personal drama. Drop your thoughts in the comments because I know this debate is far from over. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you subscribe and don't miss the next update, because if either Kendrick or Lupe says anything else, we'll be covering it right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.